It happened in February 1858 on a remote island in the Malay archipelago. It happened. An Englishman, Alfred Russel Wallace, a botanist by trade, was suffering from an attack of malaria. Feverish in his delirium. Suddenly, he saw it. A vast panorama unfolded for him. The most primitive species, an amoeba or protozoa, gradually evolving during immense eons of time into sea creatures, birds, land animals, the guiding mechanism being the survival of the fittest. Between bouts of fever, Wallace gathered sufficient strength and wrote an essay explaining his theory and sent it together with a covering letter to Charles Darwin. This was essentially the same theory that Darwin had been ruminating on for over 20 years, but never got around to publishing as he continued to collect evidence. Wallace's letter prodded Darwin to rush out his famous book the following year, in order, in part, to avoid being scooped by Wallace. Darwin panicked upon receiving Wallace's letter, writing privately that his life's work was smashed. A couple of his distinguished friends, geologist Charles Lyell and botanist Joseph Hooker, came to the rescue, quickly organizing a joint presentation to the Linnean Society of London on July 1st, 1858, of an unpublished letter and a manuscript by Darwin on natural selection, together with Wallace's letter. This was indeed a singular event in the history of ideas. The idea is appealing that species gradually evolve from one another through the survival of the fittest, the struggle for existence, natural selection and adaptation, evolution through random variation, and survival of the fittest. What a great idea. Wholly random and chance variations occur, and those that are useful are maintained through natural selection. In other words, we are the result of chance, a throw of the dice. Indeed, it seems to reflect the reality in which we live. Look out the window. There are startups occurring all the time. There's fierce competition out there. Only the fittest survive. What Darwin appears to have done is to project the war of all against all of civil society onto the animal kingdom. Even in Darwin's time, there were difficulties. One small consideration, the fossil record, a small consideration, it yields a rather different story. It records all of a sudden an explosion of life in the Cambrian era. A myriad of living things come into existence, and this largely without antecedents. Whereas, according to Darwin, all life evolved from a simple organism and branched out into a sort of tree-like pattern. The fossil record, on the other hand, shows most animals appearing at more or less the same time, rather than branching out from simpler form. The major challenge to the theory of evolution is to explain the large-scale changes that lead from one order or one class to another, as the transitional forms are largely absent in the fossil record. Darwin, a man of utmost integrity, acknowledged this. He noted that the fossil record of his time was most imperfect. He postulated that further research and exploration would yield evidence in support of his hypothesis, and that if it was not forthcoming, it would constitute a rebuttal. In my opinion, this is the birth of the science. Its signature is the drawing we see everywhere of a monkey, an ape, a gorilla, a Neanderthal, and suddenly a primitive human, and all of this in a straight line, branching out and coming with a modern day man in front of his laptop as the pinnacle of this great achievement. From ape to human, you see the glyph everywhere. And this drawing is presumed to compress 25 million years of human evolution, from progressively taller and more erect primates until finally the guy with his laptop. Yet Wallace's concept of evolution was deeper and more profound than that of Darwin. Darwin claims that all biological life can be explained through a directionist process of survival of the fittest and random mutation. Attributes in an organism will only develop when they accord the organism a survival advantage. Wallace, on the other hand, suggests that there are areas of the biological world beyond the scope of natural selection, and that some purposeful intelligence must be called upon to explain their existence. For example, Wallace reasons that man's intellect, his reason, his artistic and musical ability, his wit, his talent, and most of all his moral sense, his kindness, his compassion, his honesty, integrity, cannot be explained via the Darwinian mechanism of survival of the fittest and random mutation. Rather, this must be caused by an intelligence that guided evolution. Wallace insisted that man's mind was created by a mind. In place of the primitive materialism of evolution, we have a natural world that is designed. Wallace enunciated intelligent evolution, that is, evolution as part of a designed and guided universe. In 1910, at the age of 87, Wallace granted an interview to a reporter. And the report is a bold declaration. Whereas Darwin says nothing about the origin of life, Wallace postulates a definite act of creation. As he says, an honest and unswerving scrutiny of natural forces as he says, an honest and unswerving scrutiny of nature forces upon the mind this certain truth, that at some point in the Earth's history, there was an act of creation, a giving to the earth of something which before it had not possessed. And from that gift, the gift of life, has come the infinite, wonderful population of living forms. Then in a subsequent act of creation, according to Wallace, man is given a soul or spirit. He says, nothing in evolution can account for the soul of man. The difference between man and other animals is unbridgeable. In reply to the question, but in any case, you believe that there is purpose in creation? Wallace replied, it meets me everywhere I turn. I cannot examine the smallest or commonest living thing without finding my reason uplifted and amazed by the miracle, by the beauty, the power and wisdom of its creation. Have you ever examined the feather of a bird? I almost think a feather is a masterpiece of nature. No man in the world could make such a thing, or anything in the slightest degree resembling it. He goes on to say, the scales on the wing of a moth have no explanation in evolution. They belong to beauty, and beauty is a spiritual mystery. What is the origin of beauty? Evolution cannot explain. Indeed, why indeed are a butterfly, a deer, and an antelope beautiful? It seems to me that Wallace nicely summarizes his work when he says, my contribution is made as a man of science, as a naturalist, as a man who studies his surroundings to see where he is. And the conclusion that I reach in my book is this: that everywhere, not here and there, but everywhere, and in the very smallest operations of nature to which human observation has penetrated, there is purpose and a continual guidance and control. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for the opportunity to share a few thoughts with you. Your comments, criticisms, and suggestions are invaluable to us. Let us go forward. Thank you.